Sancho to score. No mistakes this time.
That is a rocket.
Royce and another fantastic goal by Marco Royce. Haaland's volley is beautiful beyond compare.
Das Wunder von Dortmund. Foulspiel von hinten an Götze.
Needs to lay it off. We're going to shot away. Oh, what a goal!
Eli, are you on a construction site?
I mean, technically, yes. So I needed to make a water saw because I'm having a plumber come so I can install my stove tomorrow. And so we had to cut a piece of stone off. And I was like, I need ear protection for this. It was so loud, my ears are still ringing. And I remembered halfway through that because I have concussions. My girlfriend bought me these DeWalt headphones so I could wear them at the the Westfalenstadion. So yeah, after the first time he turned this on, I was like, immediately, I was like, I need these. So yes, I am at a construction site actually, okay. And there is like wet stone dust on my floor.
Goddamn. Well, welcome back to Dortmund Dispatch. You are joined by Ali. I'm taking over host duties for today. I still got Eli with me. I got Brian, and we are welcoming Ted from VfB Americana. How you doing, Ted?
I'm great. I know a little something about construction sites. If you watched any VfB games the last couple of seasons, you remember we didn't have a home stand while they were doing the renovations ahead of the Euros. So very glad that's done, and hope you're through it soon, buddy.
Well,
thank you.
We're we got you here because Dortmund played Stuttgart at home. Our home, not your home, and we suffered a 2-1 loss. I'm gonna kick it to Brian for initial reactions on the game.
Yeah, sure. I mean, started off pretty decent. I think all of us seemed fairly optimistic after the first half during our live stream this past weekend. And then somehow in the second half, things fell apart in the not the best way. For Ted and his team, it would have been a good result because it puts a pretty good gap between us and them at this point. But yeah, it just seemed like, Stuttgart was able to get into our guys' heads, and it really messed with their performance. It kind of took them out of their rhythm. We did have Julian Brandt score in the second half, but even that really wasn't enough to spark any sort of revival in the performance. And then we had the Julian Rierson red card, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about, happen, and that kind of put out any flames of resurgence for us. But yeah, overall, I mean, first game under the direction of Niko Kovac, and I mean, it wasn't exactly what I was hoping for scoreline wise, and it wasn't necessarily what I was hoping for in terms of the decision making that I saw on his end. Get more into detail about that a little bit later, but it mainly with the substitutions being as late as they were, and we talked about that on the stream as well. So I don't think there was much good decision making on the Dortmund bench for the game, and on the pitch it wasn't great either, particularly in the second half. But Ted, I think we want to hear from you more than anything in terms about your view of Stuttgart's performance in the game and how you think they performed and stuff like that. So let's hear from you.
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting one because I don't feel like it was a great game from VfB. I think Dortmund, and this was the case in at least one of the matches we played last year, I think Dortmund was definitely the better of the two teams, and it was just a lack of finishing chances, guys being a little bit greedy in front of goal when maybe they should have made the extra pass. I think a lot in the case of Giddens, namely, and VfB didn't have a lot of chances, but they took them when they did. And I'll take something that you said, Brian, because I think a lot of it was a really mental game. And VfB, I don't know if it's just coming into this one with 4 matches on the trot running against Dortmund and feeling like they've got Dortmund's number a little bit or what it is, but it seemed like from the very beginning of the match, it was pretty chippy, and VfB knew how to get under Dortmund's skin. Um, and I've been on the other side of it, in other sports, and also, watching VfB historically play Mainz and Union and other opponents who like know how to drag you into the mud. And like I hate it. It's not fun to watch matches like that. But somehow I think VfB just figured out how to do that.
It
I'm
was
sure it
effective.
doesn't help like table position wise for VfB right now. This is a weird position for them to be in terms of standing anyway. I mean, you look at the point separation and it's like it's so tight, 3 through 11 in the Bundesliga right now. So really nobody's out of the Champions League places. But I'm sure if you're Dortmund, not used to being out of the top four, that feels a little bit weird. So I think largely it was mental stuff from my vantage point.
Yeah, it definitely was. I could sit here and be like, "Oh, the ref didn't help us," or the subs came too late, or there weren't enough subs. Because if you saw any part of the second half, like our live stream of the second half, it was just us complaining about where are the subs, where are the subs. But I'm gonna kick it to our designated stat man, and let him have fun with those.
I mean, like this is just a match from Dortmund where I feel like we got profoundly unlucky. Like if Dortmund takes the lead in this match, then Stuttgart, who didn't create a single chance, would have had to open themselves up, and Dortmund were already in the insurgents. And since the sacking of Nuri Sahin, we've been actually a very good counterattacking team, and we were not that for the first half of the season, obviously. But I think that's kind of what you needed to see happen for Borussia Dortmund to really run away with this game. Um, we still created a good amount. Like we had more than enough opportunities. What Ted was talking about though, like with some of the decision making in the final third from Dortmund, it was a little selfish. Like particularly Jimmy Gittins, we've seen him time and time again. Once he gets close to the 6 yard box and he's able to cut in and shoot, he's ruthless. But like we saw early in his career, he hit a ball from 27 yards, and the goalie just failed to parry it, and it went in the back of the net. And he clearly has been empowered to take whatever shots he wants, but he hasn't hit a ball that well from that far out. And he took multiple shots from distance, multiple like very weak shots where he could have kept dribbling, gone to the byline instead of cutting back in, and that was more like where he was just being set up by Stuttgart, but he forced it, and then he has to create the space to get that shot off, and he has to take it from a more off balance. He has to swing his hips more to kind of keep the ball on target, and when you're doing that, sometimes the ball's a little bit farther from you, and you just hit the shots a little bit weaker. And we've seen like this guy loves to cut in and shoot, but at certain times, like even Garassi at one point got on him because the decision making was not there. Kareem Adeyemi played, I think, a very good game. I thought he really could have scored a goal or gotten an assist. Some of his decision making could be brought into question, but he was consistently getting the ball in really good areas. I think on another day, like he would have had a goal or assist, and I think that's kind of like the difference. Like when you're looking at the statistics for Stuttgart, there just isn't anything attacking wise, and like I could point and say like, look, Emre Can in these two instances, his positioning could be better. Like on the second goal, he should be wider and he should be pushing his fullback in that situation. I think they'd gotten flipped to the wrong side and it was Bensebaini next to him. But either way, he needs to be pushing him a little bit wider to mark the space that Chabot is able to run into for free. And on the first goal, like that's just unfortunate. Like your defender has to slide in and make an attempt to make that block, especially when you have Emre Can allowing Mio to get into the middle of the goal. And in those two instances, like Anton just gets unlucky in the first one. On the second one, I think this is not a goal that's to do with like statistics. This wasn't a consistent type of chance that Stuttgart were able to create. It's literally just Marcel Sabitzer is running to close down Furyk, and he's very slow at this stage of his career. And this is like what it's like to watch a player who's a little bit washed up, because when he runs to approach the ball, he's too slow and he's way too high on the man. And Chris Furyk doesn't even do a dribble, and he's by him, and then he's able to run 30 yards, drag everyone out of position, and that's how a goal can be created. And that's like how Stuttgart got their opener, because we allowed ourselves to be unlucky because we got dragged out of a very good defensive shape, by one player just not being up to it, not being up to the level of this game. And I think that speaks to what happened in this game more than any statistic, because statistically, like, I just say Dortmund got unlucky, and we did. But in terms of why we lost, it's because in these two important moments, we had like really minor mistakes. I think overall defensively, did we deserve to concede 2 goals? No, I think conceding 1 goal is a little bit harsh. Although for the Anton's earlier mistake, you could argue he does deserve it. But I mean, that's what happened. Like there's not a statistical analysis of why this game happened. It's we got a little bit of bad luck, and I think that's kind of what happened.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we're only a couple minutes in, and we've already mentioned Jamie Gittins twice already. I do want to add to say that he was pretty trigger happy. Any chance he got to cut in, he was just letting it rip. And at first, we could say that he was, just feeling himself based on these past few weeks. It just feels like every shot was going in, but it could also be instructions. He could have been told, like, if you get a good look, take the shot. And I think this, drives me to the next topic of our new manager, Niko Kovac. First game in charge. It's not an easy one to manage, that's for sure. But what do you guys think based on the first game, based on what you've seen? Or is it positive, negative? I'll kick it to Brian. I haven't heard you in a bit.
Yeah, I mean, first half, kind of like what I said, I do think was quite positive. As Eli kind of alluded to earlier, there were chances. I think there were more chances in this game than we'd seen under Nuri Sahin in several games. So I think, there was a response, I guess, to him on the bench. And I think a little bit of that kind of comes from maybe, his experience as a coach. Maybe the players respect him a little bit more. Maybe he's more of like an intimidating figure in the dressing room. So maybe it's like, I don't know, like it's like that respect thing, maybe there wasn't that sort of cohesion under Sahin. So I do think there was a step in the right direction in there, but it kind of comes back to, the decision making on the bench for the second half, particularly we already mentioned, when the substitutes came in, because I think that is a very important portion of this game. I think if we have more positive, players come in like Giorena, Julian Duranville, Maxi Bayer came in pretty early. But and Daniel Svensson made his debut as well. I think if those subs come in a little bit earlier, or we have a player like what we were talking about on the stream with Jan Kuto coming in, because we know he's able to put in more crosses into the box and through balls and create those chances, because we've seen him do that. Granted, we haven't seen too much of him because he hasn't had that many minutes for Dortmund as yet, or consistent minutes, I should say. I just don't necessarily like the reaction how late it was, because you had the bulk of the subs come in, well, basically close to the end of the game. What is it, like the 80th minute or something like that? For me, that's a very late reaction, and that's something that to me didn't necessarily make sense. So I think if we look at the grand scheme of his first match in charge, yeah, some of the basics were better. There was more structure. But if you yourself are not making the proper decisions to take off players that are clearly gassed, that don't have any more energy, that don't look like they can provide on the pitch anymore for that specific game, then that is a critical mistake. And putting them in so late kind of, went to that detriment of us really being able to react. Also, I mean, even just in the example of, Jan Kuto, if he comes in for Julian Rierson a little bit earlier, it avoids the red card because, I mean, he was completely targeted throughout the entire game. He was, basically bullied throughout the entirety of the game. So it's like, you could see that this player is getting agitated. He was already on a card. Why don't you react to that? And that's my biggest gripe, I think, so far. And perhaps maybe this is a one-off thing, and moving forward, it's different. But it doesn't really set a good precedent, and it doesn't set a good tone for all this. But Ted, I actually wanted to hear your thoughts as well, and what you thought of Kovac's, I guess, decision making in this game as well, from a Stuttgart fan's point of view.
Yeah, I think he's coming in such a rough situation with the Mislintat stuff happening. I mean, it's been a rough, weird week at the top level of the club, and so I wonder how much that clouds things. Also, I mean, I have to profess, I don't know how long the guy's been in charge. I know this was his first Bundesliga match, but I'm sure that there's a bit of like he's getting used to a completely new set of personnel. There's a lot of talent on the roster. I imagine there's a lot of egos on the roster. How do you balance that sort of stuff? I will say, I mean, from what I do know, just based off of the guys that I know on the roster, I feel like Guirassy wasn't used as well as he could have been in this match. I'd love to credit some of that to, I think Chabot did an awesome job defending against him. And I think, he was able to cancel out a very dangerous striker. I think a lot of credit there is due to Chabot, but I also, having watched enough of Jeff Chabot, hold Seru Guirassy in much higher esteem, and certainly think that tactically maybe there was something that Nico could have done there to make better use of Seru Guirassy. Maybe it was, for us, we always had a lot of luck playing Guirassy alongside a second striker, and I don't know if Maxi Bayer and Guirassy have played alongside each other at all this season, but having him come on as that first sub or an early sub, I think maybe was a good move. It didn't pan out that way, but yeah, that's my take, I guess, based on limited knowledge of this situation.
So we have played in a front two, maybe not as frequently as obviously Guirassy would have played at Stuttgart in a front two. But yes, they have been tried in a front two before, and it's definitely something that it's almost kind of become a joke. Like, I call for that a lot. I do want to see that front two of Bayer and Guirassy, because I think they're both very much players that function very well at their respective clubs in that formation. So, I mean, Guirassy had Undav, and Bayer had Kramaric at Hoffenheim. So, logically speaking, you would think that the two of them could work together pretty well. But then again, I guess we'll see going forward, because we haven't seen as much of it as, like I said, he would have played at Stuttgart, for example, in that front two. But I'm hoping that that's something that maybe they experiment more with, at least on my end, because I am a proponent of the front two. And I think putting those two players in a position to succeed together can work very well for Dortmund moving forward. But that's my take.
When we played our best football, in my opinion, under Mike Tolberg, during Tolberg time, the 3 matches, you saw Guirassy really play well playing off other players, but the players would really rotate. So, like, Brandt would run off him, and Adeyemi and Bayer would all take turns running off of him. And I think that's another way to kind of get the same interactions on the pitch that you're talking about, Ted, because it's now been 4 matches post Şahin. By the time Şahin left the club, we were a negative XG differential side. For reference, last year Stuttgart was at, like, I think 0.75-ish, 0.8. Leverkusen were at around 1, and Bayern were at like 1.5 to 2. Since Şahin has left the club, Dortmund's gone from being a negative XG differential side to being a +1 per 90. I'm giving all those stats per 90. So Dortmund basically is playing at a really high level. And when you're including Stuttgart, like, yes, we've played like Shakhtar Donetsk and Werder Bremen and Heidenheim in that time. But Werder Bremen, we were down a man. We were a little bit negative in that match by XG difference. And also, like, Felix Mecha got hurt in that game. So you have a lot of things that have kind of gone against us in these games, and including, like, Ryerson getting sent off for, like, dissent. Like, that does not happen in most games. So I think there's a lot of very positive signs immediately after Shaheen left. And I think, like, not enough people are, like, accounting for how crap Shaheen was when you talk about the difference that Dortmund has been. Because, like, we played Werder Bremen earlier in the season, and, like, it was the worst football game I have ever watched. Like, if a neutral watched that game for more than 2 minutes, the TV was off. Because neither team created a chance, and Dortmund, since Shaheen have left, have gotten even better defensively, and Shaheen had got us playing better defensive football than we had played last season under Terzic, who was supposed to be a defensive coach. And now you're just seeing this team that Dortmund has been, which this season we were like a little bit better defensively. And in Shaheen's like last couple games, that completely went out the window. But you're seeing from the early season that this team is a little bit more defensively solid than we have been in the last couple seasons. We're a little bit more risk averse, which I think goes right into what Kovac is good at. And I think he's like really, he could really end up fixing our defense. This is only one match, but it's against a really good Stuttgart team. And just to go back about, we talked about Jimmy Gitten's shot location, 6 shots at 0.033 XG per shot. That's really low. Like, that's about a third the average chance. And when you get the ball 6 times in such good positions and you're taking such poor shots, that's just not gonna help you win games more times than not. And he's gotten the rub of the green this year. Last year he was a little bit of a XG underperformer, but like this year he's obviously been way over the odds. And like that just goes to show that like you cannot consistently get goals out of nothing, no matter how talented you are. Like, he's still a good player. We're not saying he isn't a talented player, but when you're a little too over reliant on that as a player, that one move and the one move's not working in a game, then you're gonna run into some trouble. And just having him like run to the byline, I think, fixes some of these problems, and that gets you away from these like long aerial crosses that are all Jeff Chabot is really good at as a defender. And maybe some balls into the channel would have helped in this match. Like, we didn't see a ton of that aside from Karim Adeyemi, who had a lot of joy in the box. Just couldn't find the right finish in this one. But I think like going forward, that's what I'd say. Like, we're trending, like we've gone from like being terrible, like unbelievably terrible, to having some very positive signs early. And I think that in this match, it's just like a bunch of bad luck, honestly. And like that's kind of that happens in a game. Over the rest of the season, it may not.
Well, how do you feel about that, Ted? Our whole game is a bunch of bad luck.
I mean, it's not entirely off the mark. From a footballing perspective, the quality of the actual play, I'd say, yeah, you guys were unlucky. I would disagree with the stuff said about Ryerson personally. I mean, he was completely out of control. I agree. Super rare that you see a guy sent off on a stoplight card for dissent, but like it was not a first offense for him. Like he completely lost his head and was not equipped for the moment in my mind. I mean, if I were in his shoes, I would have been pissed too. I'll give him that, but you're a professional footballer, you know where you sit, the referee has laid down a gauntlet already at that point. Like, I'm sorry, you gotta keep your head, or to your earlier point, Kovac has to pull him, but does he know Rierson well enough to know this is a guy who's going to lose his cool and get sent off? I don't know the answer to that question.
Fair.
But yeah, I would say Stuttgart does deserve some credit for coming into the match. And I mean, Stuttgart hustled all match. They did not create any good chances, but they were closing guys down. And I would say that the quality or lack thereof of a lot of the shots that Dortmund created was because Stuttgart forced them to take them from crap angles or to take them from outside the box. So I think there's a like Maxi Mittelstadt has had a rough run of form recently, but he was really good in this match. Jeff Chabot was, I would say, probably on both ends, the best match that he's played all season. So I think Stuttgart deserves a lot of credit for keeping Dortmund to 1 goal in this match. And then I think the 2 goals for Stuttgart, that's pure dumb luck. I mean, the Anton one is a mistake. Chabot, I mean, the commentator said it enough on the broadcast. That was his first ever Bundesliga goal, I think, or definitely his first goal for Stuttgart. Like, he's never sniffed the frame of the goal. And then you're one crazy Alex Nubel save away from it being a tie ball game. So, yeah. I think a mix of things for you guys. Definitely some bad fortune, but Stuttgart came in and made luck for themselves in this match. It reminded me a lot of, I can't remember if it was, I think it was the away match at Westfalenstadion last season was pretty similar. Like Dortmund were the better team and Stuttgart came out and somehow got the win. The matches at Neckarstadion have gone very differently, but Westfalenstadion's a tough place to play. So, hopefully for you guys, this is just, Angstgegner, bogey team, new coach. There's going to be a dead cat bounce, I've got to think, with Kovac coming up for you.
Yeah, no, and for sure, I think that what you mentioned, Ted, it is important to recognize the hustle that Stuttgart did show in this game, and also the creation of the luck, because like at the end of the day, like, yes, we did make mistakes, but you need another team to capitalize on those mistakes. So I think it's important to recognize that as well. So giving you guys your plaudits there too, I guess.
Appreciate
they
it.
defended great. They were like excellent in the low block. The chances that I would have been worried about as a Stuttgart fan were, excuse me, when Karim Adeyemi was getting in behind with like the 1-2s and things like that. Like, that would have terrified me. Luckily for you guys. Yeah, exactly. Like, luckily for you guys, he couldn't find his feet. He couldn't find the net either. And his decision making was wayward. But other than instances like that, I feel like you guys were fairly comfortable. During the live stream, I was saying, like, I had a problem with our midfield because we weren't passing through the middle. We were just, crossing to our wingers and like expecting a 1-2 to, break down a back 5 or something like that. So it can happen here and there if you drag out the right person, but not always. But we've heard all of our opinions. I'm going to give you guys a couple quotes. So Niko Kovac, new coach, says, we tried to keep it relatively simple. We worked on a few things. Ball possession is very important, but we have to increase the likelihood of creating chances. We also need a good defense and a good balance. You can't change everything within a week. True to the motto, keep it simple. The second quote, and then I'll get to opinions. The second quote is, you can see the intensity and the work rate we put in. The own goal was unfortunate. I had to go for it. Oh, sorry. This is Anton, by the way. But we had chances to get back into the game, and we need to take that with us. There were a lot of good approaches, but in the end, you have to score more than 1 goal. So, Ted, thank you so much for joining us. I want to give you the floor as to those quotes, and yeah.
I'll take the second one, just because there's still, I think, amongst a big portion of the fan base at VfB, a lot of a lot of ill will towards Valdemar Anton. On the one hand, great guy, happy to see him succeed at Dortmund and wish him luck. But anytime we go head to head, I hope that we put him in the ground. And you guys were talking about your Discord and chatter. You can imagine we were fairly elated when he scored the opener on the own goal. That karma being what it is, that was very fitting for us. And I'll also, I guess, on that note, mention it was very fun on the broadcast in a stadium as big and as loud as yours is, to still hear the VfB away fans wolf whistle that man every single time he touched the ball for 96 minutes. So
Totally
that
fair.
was awesome. But to leave you guys on a positive note, with that, before I hop off, you got a good one with him. Like, hopefully you're seeing it. I think early days, I don't know that I think he was buried behind other guys. It looked like early on, maybe, when he first moved over. And I certainly, selfishly was like, this is hilarious. He's made this move, and like he's going to be stuck behind Sula and Schlotterbeck and like all of these other guys, and he's going to be riding the bench. And how's that for getting to play in front of 80,000 fans and all of that stuff? But I think you're seeing he's the real deal. I could see him displacing Chan as captain in the next couple of seasons from an outsider perspective. I don't know if you guys, I'd be interested actually, before I hop off, to hear if you guys think there's any validity to that. But I mean, he was a great leader for us. Do you guys see anything like that coming in his future? Are you guys high on Valdemar Anton, or do you think I'm blowing smoke?
So I
really
like him.
like the player.
Yeah.
I think that like the sounds from the fans, just because he's been here a little longer and being a world class, like Valdemar Anton's very good, but there's a big gap between being very good and being world class. And I think Nico Schlotterbeck is a young leader. The club wants him to be the cornerstone of the entire team, and he's done all the little things this season, and I think that it's only a matter of time. He would need to sign a new contract. I think that's coming. I think it really just depends on if we get Champions League football and stuff like that. I think he's probably going to sign a new contract regardless, but I think how much he makes and whether or not certain players leave to accommodate the wages that he deserves, because he deserves a lot of money. Because Voldemar Anton's left VfB Stuttgart to secure generational wealth for his family. Nico Schlotterbeck, whenever he signs his next contract, is going to be getting the absolute bag and a half. So I think that's the way it's kind of heading for me.
Hey man,
Yeah.
I'm ready to get rid of the captaincy off Chan right now, but that's a whole different topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all of us here. I think with Chan, none of us really see him as, past, present, or future captain. It's just kind of is what it is. He's kind of a placeholder at this point in terms of that position. But in terms of Anton, I feel it's been a mixed bag, and part of it I feel like isn't even his fault, because there's just been so much change and constant, instability at Dortmund this season, both with, the tactics that Şahin wanted to play, then Şahin leaving, then Tolberg coming in, then now Kovac coming in. But on top of that, there's been so many injuries, particularly in defense, that you haven't solidified that, starting center back pairing at this point, because you've seen in the beginning of the season, you had Sula in the mix, as we kind of alluded to. Now he's been injured. Then, Anton was injured for a while. Then Schlotterbeck was out on a red card or injured or this, that, and the third, Then he's had to play with Chan or, there's just so much instability there that I feel like with regards to any of our defenders, I don't think we've necessarily seen the best of any of them this season. But I do agree with what Eli said in terms of the captaincy. I think, with Nico Schlotterbeck, Dortmund do have that ready-made leader that they can build around. And I think, if anything, he's going to be the next to get that armband. Even before Chan became captain, I thought Gregor Kobel should take that role. But now we don't know what's going to happen with him. We don't know if he even stays in the summer. So the most likely option for that, in my opinion, right now is Schlotterbeck. But of course, there's still a lot of the season to be played. Anton can feature a lot more in those games and build up that reputation, both with the fans and with the club. So there is still that option there. And we also don't know what's going to happen next season. He may end up being a pivotal player next season. There's too many unknowns, and I think it's too early to kind of pin him for that long-term leader. Will he be one of the leaders at the club? It's likely. He's an experienced player, German international. He's seen a lot. He's been through a lot, and he had a lot of success at Stuttgart as well. So the foundation for that is there. But what that role will be, I think it's far too early, both in terms of his time at the club and his ability to show what he's capable of so far, because of that instability to exactly say what that role is going to be.
Cool. Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Fun talking.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime. Catch you
nice
guys
to
later.
meet you.
Later.
Thanks to Ted for coming on. Really appreciate having him here. But just to go back to the Niko Kovac quote, which it was actually said before the game. I was not aware of this. He said that obviously he wants to keep things simple and ball possession is very important to him. He wanted to increase the likelihood of creating chances. So I'll kick it to Brian. Is this some of what you saw on the pitch as a step one, really?
Yeah, so I think for sure we did see an improvement in the basics. And if we're solely talking about especially the performance on the pitch, I mean, we kind of already alluded to it. There were a lot more chances taken in this game than we had seen in previous games. So I think as an initial portion of it, I think it was a good reaction. Not obviously notwithstanding the mistakes that we made that led to the goals. Because those things, as we already mentioned, they happen, right? Wasn't great to see, but it is what it is. But I think overall, when it comes to the general basics, I think there was a bit more structure to how Dortmund performed. And I think it is a step in the right direction, putting it shortly.
Eli?
Yeah, I mean, he described exactly what happened, and like 68% possession, that's pretty high for what we've seen from Dortmund this year. Like, that's a number that you would be very happy at if you could do that against any Champions League side, even some of like the weaker ones. But I think that I'm very happy with what I've seen so far from Niko Kovac. He's not perfect. Live stream heard it first, but I really like the idea of, Julian Nagelsmann, contract up in 2026, Niko Kovac, contract up in 2026. Like, that's a pretty decent long-term plan. Like, next year can be a building year, because I'm happy to not win something for a year if it points us in the right direction. And for too long, we've seen Borussia Dortmund like throw shit at the wall and hope it sticks. And it's led to a squad and a midfield specifically that's too old, too unathletic, and just not good enough. And building towards something is good, and I think we saw a lot of positive stepping stones from this performance, even in a loss.
Yeah, I think I do agree with you guys. There are a lot of not a lot of, but there are a few positives to take away. Seeing our wingers actually getting behind into space was a very positive thing. Seeing Brandt in these past few weeks, I know it's obviously not under Kovac, but reactivated, I should say. He wasn't particularly great, obviously, in this game, but just seeing him a bit more mobile and a bit more interested has been nice. But all that to take us into our star and duds of the week. So last time I had Brian start. So Eli, give us your star.
This is hard. There's not a lot of players who I think were particularly like. I want to say Karim Adeyemi because he was fun. He created things, but the lack of like a goal and the lack of an assist is like in part due to some like not bad decision making in my opinion, but not it didn't work out and it wasn't especially good. Like there was an instance where I would have liked to seen a shot that he passed and like it wasn't like a front-footed, comfortable, easy clearance. It like clips a guy's heel and it gets cleared away. There's a ball that I think Jamie Gittins should slide for. He doesn't, and nothing comes of it. But in terms of attacking players and players who I could see like really have some explosive performances, it's got to be Kareem Adeyemi. Um, but like there's no one to me in this match who performed like flawlessly because like Julian Ryerson I thought had an excellent shift, but then he did have a little bit of dissent and he needs to learn how to flop because when you flop when there's a clear foul called, that's how you get those calls. And when you just complain about real foul calls, the referee, because you didn't flop, isn't going to necessarily give it to you, and that's unfortunately how it is. And I think the one he did get is because he fell down. Like, so he has to fix that performance up. But I don't think there was anyone for me who was unequivocally good that played for a considerable amount of this match.
Right.
So before I guess I get into the player that I'm going to choose, I did want to comment a little bit more on the whole Rierson situation. And I will disagree in saying I don't necessarily want Rierson to learn to flop because that's part of the reason I personally love him as a player. He's not the type to do that. Like when he's getting like absolutely destroyed and throttled, he will still push through that and he will run into space and do what he needs to do. And that's what I love about him. And that's what I loved about his performance against Stuttgart, despite the fact that he got the red card. So I'm very tempted to give him start of the week just because despite the fact that he kept getting throttled, he kept going and kept going. And even in that situation when he received the red card, he initially started to walk away. And we said this on the stream. He was like, you know what? Like I'm frustrated, but I'm going to walk away. I'm not going to do anything. And then he gets the red card because he's like trying to like get himself out of like being like basically given like a bear hug. Like it's unfortunate. So like he doesn't listen to our pod, but maybe it would have been a consolation prize. But I'm gonna go with Svensson actually, and mainly that's just because he made his debut. Making a debut in front of 80,000 players, especially player that he is, first time in the Bundesliga, first time at this level. Big up to him for coming on and playing the role that he did. Obviously, didn't really do all that much because didn't get too many touches of the ball. But kind of like what Eli said, it's not easy to find a singular player in this squad or in this performance to get like a star of the week performance because no one really had that sort of shining performance. It just wasn't that type of game, and that's not really saying like anyone did atrociously. People had bad performances, but like I don't know, it's just one of those games, So I want to give it to Svensson just because it was his first game in the Bundesliga in front of 80,000 plus fans, and yeah, I mean, good on him. Hopefully, he can kick on and have some good performances in the coming games.
Damn. Yeah, there's nobody to give it to. So I'm gonna give it to Rierson because up until the red, I was actually I was pretty happy with him. Even with the whole red situation, I don't want to justify how he reacted, but I do like that he does wear his heart on his sleeve. And he is an honest person, above everything else. So I'm call me what you will, but that's my star of this week at the very least.
It's respectable, man.
Yeah, was my second shout. My third would have been Emma, but I guess we can be nice and give it to a guy for coming on the pitch.
Fair enough. All right, so duds. I'm gonna start this one off. This was kind of I don't want to say everyone was bad because everyone was just bang average. So I'm gonna give it, unfortunately, to JG, only because I need that boy to be more aware of his teammates and his surroundings, and he needs to we saw something similar against Barca where he kept walking into a trap, against Kunde, and we saw the same thing this time where he kept getting shown the angle that he wants, and then they close it and close it and close it, and it kept happening. And you mentioned earlier, Eli, how Seru was getting frustrated. It was not once; it was so many times. Like he throw his hands in the air, he's so upset, which I get, right? But obviously, it's not a knock on his quality. We do expect more from him, so for this week, he'll be my dud. Brian, I'll kick it to you quickly.
So mine's going to be counterintuitive here because we did say that he did provide some more stability to this Dortmund side maybe 5-10 minutes ago, but it's going to be Niko Kovac. And that's mainly because of what we talked about, the subs. I think that's a big part of this game. And I'm going to sound like I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but I think if he puts in Reina, if he puts in Duranville, if he puts in all these players, Jan Couto, all these different players, there is a different response and a different outcome to this game. If we put in a player, for example, like we mentioned already, Jan Couto, Rierson doesn't get the red, and he's more than likely able to create a couple chances for his teammates to score. Hindsight is 2020, and maybe all I'm talking about is just speculation. But I think in those situations you need a reaction, and I didn't see that from the bench, or rather, the reaction that I did saw was far too late, or did see. Excuse me, I can't even speak. The reaction that I saw was far too late, and that's problematic because in a game like this where you're chasing it, you can't wait till the 80th minute to react. We've talked about this with other coaches in the past. Terzic was particularly one that, we were always confused about why the subs came as late as they did or why they were as negative as they were. These weren't necessarily negative subs because, let's be honest, they weren't, but they came at a time where these players that were coming in didn't have enough time to warm up or have a positive effect on the game. So, unfortunately, he takes my dud at this point in time.
Eli?
Yeah, also took Ryerson off set pieces, which I think is like a very valid criticism. Although, like, if I was to like not have watched every Borussia Dortmund game for 90 minutes, I might be like, Pascal Gross has been unbelievable at set pieces for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Like, I'm putting Pascal Gross on set pieces. But like, we have seen this season that Julian Ryerson deserves the opportunity to fail. And not taking him off set pieces was a mistake. Or taking him off some set pieces early in this match was a mistake. He did end up back on them. And that's a big part of how he ended up being one of our like leaders in this match for expected assisted goals. Because this season his service has been genuinely very good. My dud of the week, Marcel Sabitzer. I'm not going to say anything more about it. Like, we've said it before. We've said it, like, I'm done. Yeah, like, that's it. We can move on.
All right. I will move on. You have to tell me twice.
Short and sweet to the point, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, Brian, going away from the game, what are your thoughts about the Sven Mislintat dismissal?
So this is one of those cases of, it's a media chatter. It's hard to really know what is true and what isn't true in all this. We've had discussions about Mislintat, in depth, quite a bit with Ted actually too, when we were bringing him in initially. And as we know, he's been a problematic figure in football for some time now. Does he have his brilliant moments? Sure. He's been fantastic in terms of bringing, players into the club with his first stint at Dortmund. Ted and other Stuttgart fans that I know have spoken very, very highly of him for the business he did and the deals that he oversaw when he was with the club. Clearly so, because we decided to bring in Serhou Guirassy when he came in here. So, I mean, he was able to find players that really fit that team and really excelled. But on the flip side of that, when you have someone who simply doesn't work well and is abrasive and is kind of going against the grain with kind of, what someone like Sebastian Kell or Lars Ricken or anyone else might be thinking, that creates friction in the club. And for a club to succeed, you need everyone to be on the same page. So if Mislintat is unable to, or was unable, I should say, to put his ego aside, and other people as well were not able to put their ego aside or not look past the things that I guess, infuriated them about the way Mislintat worked, for the better of the club. I think it's fairly reasonable that they let him go. It's not fully surprising considering his track record, the things that happened at Arsenal and Ajax and everywhere else. So it's not a shocker. I definitely expected a little bit more when he came in. And maybe that's, I guess, a little bit of nostalgia from the Klopp years, which I think every Dortmund fan kind of has to get away from at this point. So yeah, I don't know. It's just like it's frustrating because like you would have thought he would have brought more to the table and been able to work in tandem with people because his ideas necessarily weren't bad. I mean, later this summer it was reported that he was looking at Minta. I mean, the whole Cherky situation. These are not bad profiles. These are great profiles and these are great players to be targeting. But if you're going behind people's backs, if you're calling players behind people's backs, if you're doing things with or outside the scope, I guess, of what your job is, and
It's
kind of going
shady.
against people, and it's shady, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like if you're not able to work in a team and actually work in tandem with the people that you're supposed to be helping oversee this club, then at the end of the day, what are you doing there? So you may have good ideas, but if you're not able to convey them properly or bring them to fruition in a way that's positive and goes along with your role and doesn't overstep boundaries, then it's not helpful.
100%, 100%. And to ask Eli, what do you think
I have
about?
way harsher words.
Well, I was gonna move past it because I
Oh
had a
boy.
feeling. I had a feeling. So,
No,
what do you
let him
think this?
speak. Let him speak.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
If you, like, this is exactly one of the things I would be talking about when I said that the club for recent years has just thrown shit at the wall and hope something sticks. Like,
Hmm.
Sven Mislintat has been a like sporting director, like top tier executive. He's not a guy who's answered to anyone. And if you look at the last couple times he's answered to people, that's when things have gone wrong. Like at Ajax, he didn't really answer to anyone, but he was so bad in the top job that the fans literally like destroyed their own stadium. Like there were riots. And if you look at the times before that where he had to answer to people, he had to answer to like higher ups at Arsenal, and he was unable to work with them, and he had to answer to Vatska. And whether or not you hate Watska, like he's the president of the club. Like you have to be able to work with him, and you have to be like a decent person. And like if you were hiring Mislintat to come work under Kale's contract expired this winter, Mislintat or this summer, Mislintat takes over. That's one thing, but if you believe in Sebastian Kale, you have to let Sebastian Kale do his job and not hire in some guy who's literally gunning for his job and who apparently like hates the coach and is like actively campaigning against him.
Hmm.
Assuming that Terzic rumor is true, like Terzic was not a good option. And like we're talking about Minte, like this guy scored like 15 goals and was like the top of everyone's list and moved for like almost 40 million like euros this summer. Like that's not like difficult to scout. Like that's like pointing and saying like, "Oh, look, that guy's good." Like anyone on Twitter can look at the guy and be like, "That guy's really good." That's not necessarily like your job. Like your job as a scout should be to find like plus value and like Cherokee, like, yeah, cool. This is a guy that's been like a highly rated like French youth international for 5 years. Those guys like aren't hard to scout. It's typically like they're very good. You weren't bad and playing for French youth national teams. Um, but that again, it's just like this was never going to work out. He was always going to butt heads, and like the issue for me is that like Sebastian Kale or Mislintat. It had to be one or the other. And like one person being able to put their vision on a squad and line up the goals and getting the players in the right ages and all that works so much better than this haphazard squad building of having two guys and like we pick half their signings and half this other guy's signings and then let's throw in one from the coach And now, like, maybe Jan Koto isn't liked by Mike Tolberg, and he's not liked by Niko Kovac, and maybe he won't be liked by Julian Nagelsmann because he's 5'3". Like, stop buying players with these obvious, considerable flaws for such high fees if they're only going to work under one manager, and stop signing guys that are 33 if your squad's not good enough to compete now. Because if we're not good enough to compete now, we should be building for something. And like when you have these competing ideologies, and you're siding with one guy here and the other there, it's not going to work out long term, because that's how you end up with a haphazard squad. And we need to be just focused on signing good players that are pretty young, and then we can have a crop of guys that all peak together. Like if you look at the squads that were winning under like why did I say Klinsmann? Oh my god, I've lost it. Under Jurgen Klopp,
There it is.
we're essentially like having a bunch of guys that are growing together. Like if you look at Gundogan and we look at like Schmelzer, like all these guys and Marco Reus, they're all maturing together. They're all around the same age and they all hit their peak together. And when they all hit their peak, you win the title. And instead, we have brought in a 33-year-old Pascal Gross, and we brought in a 22-year-old in Jan Koto, and we brought in a 28-year-old and a 27-year-old. Like, are you trying to win right now, or are you trying to win in 3 years? Like, what's the plan? And like that was the issue with bringing in a guy like Sven Mislintat, because he really eroded Kale from being able to make a plan. And like, I'm not saying one is better than the other, but like it had to be one.
So then, what does this mean for Kale and Rickon going forward? Like, obviously, I don't want to say dead weight, right? But this has been dropped. Now, do you think that we do see a bit more of a squad building like activity moving forward, or are you like just, inshallah?
For Kale, I got 4 words: step up or shut up. Like,
That's 5.
step up, shut up, whatever. 5. Oh my god. You know what I mean.
I got
I
you.
got one. I'm trying to keep it short, and here you are criticizing me because I can't count to 5.
So I'm the Mislintat side of the group.
I have 3 words. Cohesion is key. And
Okay, there you go.
that's kind of, I think that's kind of what we're all getting at. And I think no matter what, 3, I can count. Yes, you did.
I should have gone with the smaller number. I would have been fine.
But yeah, like it's all about cohesion at this point. And I think Eli had a very important point there. If you have 2 guys that have very differing ideas, both pulling at the strings behind the scenes at this club, you're not going to have a cohesive squad. If you don't have a cohesive squad, you're not winning anything. You're not going to have any structure. You're just not going to achieve anything. So at the end of the day, I think having one person in control of that portion of things will lead to more cohesive decisions. Whether they're ideal decisions remains to be seen. Kale, as we've talked about, has been a mixed bag in terms of his decision making, all that stuff. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's important to have a singular direction as a club. And I really hope that in appointing Kovac, in, Mislintat leaving, a lot of the drama subsides and we can move forward as a club in one direction together. That is my hope.
Amen, brother. So we got some games coming up. We got Sporting and Bochum. So for the Sporting game, I want to hear some predictions. Let's go with Eli. What do you think?
Is the first leg home or away? Do you have it?
I'm actually about to check right now. I think it's away.
So the first
away.
game I have it away. So I'm gonna say, oh my god, I want to go 2-1 win. I'm a Kovac believer, I guess. So I'm gonna say 2-1 win away from home. I really like how different we've been since Shaheen's left. So yeah, I'll go 2-1.
Brian?
Yeah, this might be optimistic. I'm actually going to say 2-0. I think this is one of the first clean sheets that we keep. I think it sounds counterintuitive because of this performance, but I think as he gets more time, he being Kovac with this team, we do get that defensive stability that we've been lacking. And because we've been creating more chances, we have been better on the counter. I think that produces results. Not to say that this team isn't, something to be wary of, because Sporting do have a lot of good players. Conrad Harder is popping off with them right now, so something to worry about there. But we will have Nico Schlotterbeck back in the lineup for this. So, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic. So, yep, 2-0.
Well, I was gonna say 1-1, but there is a 2 theme here, so I'll say 2-1. Let's go with the 2-1 win. I think we're capable of getting a win away. Pardon me, especially with the front three of Guirassy, JG, and Adeyemi. I'm not gonna lie, I do hope to see Bayer, if not start really early in the second half, in a 4-4-2. You happy about that, Brian?
Always am, always will be. Let's get it.
Because if I've seen a little bit. I won't say too much. I've seen a little bit of Sporting. They do like to push up, and having guys that running behind could be really, really dangerous for us, in our favor. But that's neither here nor there. The game would have already been done by the time you hear this. Anyway, the next game is Bochum. So Bochum drew 3-3 against Leipzig, and they beat St. Pauli. They also have quite a few draws and losses in the most recent games. I believe their last game was against Kiel, and it was a draw this past weekend. So, what do you think, Brian, about this game? What are the predictions? How are you feeling?
So, going along with the theme of, more stability and all of that, I think we can get a good result in this game. Once again, it really depends on what Dortmund we see. Bochum has been kind of a little bit of a bogey team for us as well, kind of like Stuttgart. We've seen them hold us to draws, and that's affected title races. So it is a bit of a derby, right? The little Riviera derby. So, it is something to keep in mind, as these games do have a little bit of a different tendency about them. But I will say that Dortmund need to start getting these wins on the board, so I'm going to speak it into existence. 3-0 thrashing.
Yeah, you know what? I'm right there with you. 3-0. 3-0.
I was thinking like that, but is it Bochum or is it Myron Boadu and friends? Because this guy, he was very hyped out of the Eredivisie, had some very big seasons very early in his career, went to Monaco, was not good, and now is having a very good season for a dreadful team. Bochum, fun fact, has never won a match I attended, 0-1. And I would like Dortmund to keep that energy this season and help ensure their relegation, because they are terrible and I hate them. And I hate you, Felix Paslak. I'm not sure why all the ultras whistled you every time you existed, but you deserved it, and you were kind of a little too celebratory when I was there. So don't like that. We made you. Remember that. So I'm gonna go 3-1. The goals from Boadu, and the 3 goals from Borussia Dortmund. It's gonna be Adeyemi, Guirassy, and Guirassy again. So that's your score predictions. Don't gamble. Not gambling advice. I will not be paying you money if you lose money to that bet, but that's what's going to happen. So yeah, that's it. That's
and
it
my,
for me.
my predictions are also based on optimism more than anything. So they're not necessarily analysis. It's just me trying to speak good things into existence for the club I love. So
it's amazing how we drop Shaheen and all of a sudden we're all optimistic.
Because it's only up from here, boys.
I swear to God. Well, we reached the end. Quick fantasy Bundesliga update from Eli, because guess what? I'm not playing. Let's see what.
You better keep stalling, because this app takes 3 minutes to load.
Okay. Well,
the top 4 or 5 teams are already there. So.
Oh yeah.
Ooh, Ali, can you read? I don't even have the notes in front of me.
No, I never learned. So Edward DC4 leads, followed by Ryusungi, followed by Pints of Bayer, FC Clever Football Puns, and Brest of 09. That's the top 5. I hope I pronounced everything right. If I didn't, if I insulted you, I apologize.
Rooting for you, Pints of Buyer.
But yeah, of course you are.
The agenda is real.
If if uh uh if Brian had a team, it'd be called 442.
4 for 2 Buyer Bowl.
Yeah,
I was gonna say you gotta have Bayer in there somewhere.
yeah, 100%.
That you
Well,
do.
that's it from me. Anything else from you guys other than socials, of course?
Yeah. Catch me, Twitter still, and Blue Sky as well. Had a recent piece come out for GGFN about Daniel Svensson, so if you want to go read that, that should be up. And yeah, other than that, follow our pod on all the socials, all the all the places you listen to your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that fun stuff. So yeah.
Follow the podcast everywhere. I don't care if you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, Dortmund Dispatch everywhere, YouTube, Spotify. I'm just gonna repeat what you just said everywhere, especially YouTube, right? We're posting obviously video episodes. So if you're like me and you prefer to watch or have it on the side and occasionally look over, hop on YouTube. Check out Eli on our Blue Sky
I've
Dortmund
not
Dispatch.
even logged into it yet, so
Well, let's just say
stay
that you
tuned. I
are.
will eventually.
There it is. But we're everywhere. Anywhere that you consume content, we are there. Thank you so much for listening. This is my first episode hosting. I hope I've been a great host, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.